Hi everyone, it's SharRon Jamison, the CEO and founder of the Jamison Group, and I hope that you can join me this evening on this Friday evening. I always have a lot to share, something about working in the corporate setting as well as working in the church setting, that by the end of the week I have a lot of information to share. So I wanted to share a couple of things with you today. Hey, Miss Blessing, for being here, and Tanisha. And if you have a moment, if you don't mind, to share this broadcast, because I'm going to talk about boundaries, healthy boundaries, because I hear people talking about boundaries all of the time. But boundaries are not just status symbols to be expressed. They are power principles to be enforced. I'm going to say that again. Boundaries are not just status symbols to express. They are really power principles to enforce. And oftentimes we fail to enforce our boundaries. And when we fail to enforce them, our boundaries become these big principles with little power. Big principles with little power, which means that we have to enforce our boundaries. Hey, Tanisha and Rochelle, please feel free to share this if you will. So I want to talk about three things that I want you to think about when we are setting and discussing boundaries. Because remember, without demonstration, all boundaries are words of declaration. But declaration doesn't get what we want in life. We need demonstration. So three things I want you to consider. And if you're used to working with me, you already know these three. But I believe that healthy boundaries, again, are power principles to be enforced, not just status symbols to be expressed, because they do three very important things. The first thing they do is provide some education. E is for education. Let me tell you, our boundaries help people understand what we will and what we will not tolerate. Because the truth is, we can love people, but we can't do life with people, with everybody. And so our boundaries provide some education to communicate what we will tolerate, what we will not tolerate. Because the truth is, hey, Katrina, what you tolerate is what you will have in your life. And so we need boundaries to communicate to other people what's acceptable and what's not acceptable to do in our lives, right? We need to let people know that we don't mind dating you, but we don't want to date all your dysfunction. And when we have effective boundaries, we educate people by not only one, communication, by telling them, but we also educate people about our boundaries when we enforce them by consequences. Two ways to educate people. Some people who are fast learners, they can do it by communication. But if not, guess what? Some people need some consequences. They need to feel some repercussions and some reprimands. They need to have some punitive action to understand that they cannot cross certain boundaries in our lives. So again, our boundaries, hey, Kathy and Heather and Tamika, provide education to other people about what you will tolerate and what you will not tolerate, and also what you will allow and what you will not allow, because people will do what you allow in your life. Again, you can date the person, but you don't want to date all their demons because you have enough demons of your own. So the first one is education. The second thing that healthy boundaries help people understand is to help them understand and help yourself understand about your things that you need to protect. So it's protection. Boundaries help with education. Second thing is with protection. Now, why is that important? It's because there are three things that we have to always protect to make sure that we stay healthy. One, we have to protect our emotional safety so that we don't go cray-cray. Because you know, if you let cray-cray in the car, after a while, cray-cray is going to want to drive, and cray-cray would drive your life off a ditch, right? Two, it helps us protect us against being emotional unstable, because we always want to have our mental faculties, but some people just make you crazy. So you want to make sure that you have some protection to maintain your emotional safety, your mental stability. The third thing, your financial security. your financial security, and you have to protect that. Hey, Ayana and Ken and Mr. Perry. So when we think about healthy boundaries, we want to understand that our boundaries should protect us, should protect our emotional safety, should protect our emotional, our mental stability, as well as our financial security. And we need some protection against that, because if not, we won't stay sane. I tell people all the time that I will always protect my mission, my mind, and my money. My mission, my mind, and my money. And anything that threatens or jeopardizes my mission, my mind, or my money cannot be in my life. So I want you to think about what's going on in your life. Hey, Laura and Myra, and ask yourself, do you have healthy boundaries to protect your emotional, to provide emotional safety, mental stability, and financial security? Remember, people should not be able to have a significant impact on your mind, your message, and your money. So we understand that our boundaries provide protection, but also our boundaries provide preservation. Why? If you don't put healthy boundaries around what's important to you, you will not only have self-care, but you will not also have support against your dreams, your vision, and your creativity. We need to make sure that we don't lose momentum. So healthy boundaries provide some preservation of your momentum, because once you are in action, it's easy to keep going versus stop and start and stop and start and stop and starting. So when we think about our healthy boundaries provide protection, but also preservation to make sure that you don't lose momentum and that you start losing what I call effectiveness and success as you embark on your divine mission. So that's really important. Hey, Marian. The third thing I want you to think about is that healthy boundaries not only provide education, protection, and preservation, but the S is separation. And when I think about separation, I think about boundaries providing separation in a way that's situational and seasonal. Because let's be honest, sometimes we need to steal away. Sometimes we need to step back and to take a sabbatical or hiatus to get some clarity in our life. If you think about it, life is moving so fast that sometimes you don't have time to reflect on what's important. You don't have time to get clarity. So, and anytime you don't have clarity, you don't make good decisions. So sometimes we need some separation. We have to put in a boundary to provide some space so that we can have some great thinking, so that we can ask some great questions, that we can have reflection and introspection. And many times when we're thinking about separation, we're thinking about really short term, seasonal, situational. It's kind of like when you are in a marriage and your partner acts a fool. Sometimes you need some separation to get clear if you want to stay in a relationship. Or sometimes we need, for example, sabbaticals from our jobs, because we need some space, some distance, so to evaluate how we are feeling, how we're doing, how we're thinking in a specific situation. Hey, Shawan and Kathy and Lovey. So I want you to think about your healthy boundaries in your life. I see so many people professing, oh, I have boundaries, I have healthy boundaries. But healthy boundaries mean nothing if they're not enforced. If you are not going to find a way to enforce your boundaries, to make sure that you protect yourself and establish some sense of self-care, your boundaries are words. They're big principles with little power. So I want you to think about what you're doing in your life and to really assess, are you not only expressing your boundaries, but enforcing them in a way that provides you with some sense of self and some sense of clarity, some sense of space. Hey, Derek. So again, boundaries, healthy boundaries provide education to yourself and to others about what you will accept and what you will tolerate. Because remember, it's okay to set some boundaries. You can love someone, but you don't have to do life with them. And if people act a fool, they don't need to act a fool in your life. So boundaries provide education. Hey, Eva, and please feel free to if you will, just share this live. So boundaries provide education. Secondly, boundaries provide protection. Boundaries make sure you stay financially secure, emotionally safe, and mentally stable. They ensure that you provide some sense of self-care, because you can't love somebody if you don't love yourself first. So we want to make sure that you understand that healthy boundaries provide protection, but they also provide preservation. The last thing you want to do in your life is lose momentum because you have people in places in your life where they don't belong. Remember, everybody should not have total or the same access to your life. And so when people are encroaching, we need to have some enforcement to make sure that you don't lose momentum. So boundaries provide preservation. And the third thing, again, separation. Sometimes you need some breathing space. You need some room. You need some sense to steal away, some isolation, so that you can make some good decisions. And that separation might be seasonal or situational, but you need it. You cannot make good decisions when you are weary, and you cannot make decisions when you're too embedded in the forest. Sometimes you have to step out and step back and step away to get clarity about all of the variables before you make a decision. So remember that: education, protection, and preservation, and separation. And make sure your boundaries have teeth of enforcement. If there's no enforcement, there's really not a boundary. They're just words. And you don't win with words alone. You only win when you can put some teeth and some power in your words, by having consequences, by having some repercussions, by having some punitive impact, if you will, to make sure that people don't cross over boundaries. Remember, boundaries are not to be crossed, but people will cross them if they don't see them or if they are not expressed. So we don't need to have silent boundaries. Say what you want, say what you need, say how you like it, and say what you expect in your own life. Remember, you can't really determine or dictate what another person wants, but you should know what you want, and to make sure you have it. Make sure you express boundaries, and because if you don't draw the line, you can't be mad when people cross it. Right? Draw the line so people can see what the lines are, and then you don't have to worry about people crossing the line. So thanks so much for stopping by and staying with me. I want you to think about your boundaries. I hear people say them all the time, but again, if you are not enforcing them, they have no power. So let's dare to soar higher by establishing boundaries that help us soar, to help us to be bigger, better, and bolder. And I look forward to hopefully seeing some of you in the class the last week of August, where I will be sharing the 4 levels of relationships. And the seminar, the webinar, will be really good for people when we're discussing platonic, romantic, as well as professional relationships. So thanks so much for stopping by. I appreciate it. Have a great day. Sia, Katrina, Yvette, and Ty, and Derek, and Heather. I appreciate you. Thanks so much for joining me. And let's dare to soar higher. Have a blessed weekend, and I'll see you next week. Bye.